This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop. Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy!
Been a long education.
Yeah, you know, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
It is Wednesday, 6 minutes after the hour, and I appreciate you stopping in to have a conversation with me. Your support means a lot. I appreciate it. Got to thinking about the last call here before we went to break there. And you know, this David Evans, Dr. David Evans, PhD from Stanford, he has 6 degrees in mathematics, and he's an engineer. And originally he was, for the nation of Australia, one of the guys that had to go out and figure out how to stop climate change. And then he said, well, you're wrong about what you're doing here, and the climate models don't work. And I am a mathematician and a scientist, and he's highly educated. So he's now been, he's gone from being the really smart guy, according to the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, to, well, he's just dumb. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Really? PhD in mathematics and applied mathematics from Stanford, a PhD. And he's the dumb guy in the room. I get it. So I decided to look here over the last few minutes at some other indicators of what President Barack Obama and all these folks are trying to tell us about climate, those on the left, and just have a common sense conversation with you about actual applied facts and what's really going on. Observations, that's how you do science, right? Observations. Well, here's an observation for you. 2013, 2014, and 2015 have just set a record for the least amount of tornadoes in a 3-year period since modern record keeping began in 1950. Keep in mind, hot, wet climates create tornadoes, right? When it gets hot and muggy, that's when you get tornadoes. You get these big hot systems ramming into each other, creating unstable air and tornadoes. So therefore, pretty simple 5th grade science. Therefore, if the earth was getting hotter and the atmosphere was getting wetter, and therefore we're getting unstable, we would have more tornadoes, more hurricanes, more cyclones and monsoon weather and all of this. And yet we're at a period of time where we're having some of the fewest tornadoes we've ever had. In fact, March of this year, for example, the least tornadic activity since 1951. In January, there were none reported in the United States. Yeah. The most number of tornadoes ever recorded in a month, 180. That was back in 1976. 1976, by far, the most active year for tornadoes in American history. The most violent tornado in Michigan's history, 1953. 116 people died. And I bring this to your attention because it's important to understand. It's important to understand because if we're not having these big storm events, and we're not having tornadoes, and we're not having significant hurricanes, what's going on? Now, we do have the second season for tornadoes begins in November. November accounts for a large number of tornadoes every year. In fact, very active days on occasion. Keep that in mind. About 15% of the most active tornado days in history have come in November. Right? But how long has it been since Florida had a major hurricane? A major hurricane, not in more than 10 years now, right? And we just had Joaquin flood South Carolina, and they called it a 1,000-year flood, but that was just the governor speaking. She has no idea if it was 1,000 years or 200 years. She has no idea. It was a comment that's been picked up by everybody, but it's not based in scientific fact. It's based in a comment that she made. Nikki Haley made. And for her, yeah, it's a disaster. It's a lot of rain because you end up with a system that got stuck there. But it didn't flood the entire eastern seaboard. It flooded one area of coastal South Carolina. You know what? It's not the first time, I can assure you, that has happened. And it won't be the last, maybe the only time in our lifetime, in fact, likely the only time in our lifetime that a system stacks up that way. But this notion that weather's getting more violent, it's not. It's just not. You know, the worst time for hurricanes in American history as far as damage and destruction, the 1920s. The 1920s. Now you had the deadliest hurricane in American history happened in Galveston, Texas in 1900. That was before they named the things. But hurricane activity is also waning. If you truly had a climate that was getting warmer and more violent, wouldn't you think you'd see some empirical evidence of that? Don't you think we would have some personal experience with that? Don't you think that we would have something to say, hey, look at this. Yeah, you've got Joplin, Missouri. I'll give you that. A big tornado hit a populated area. Okay, fair enough. And that happens. Like I said, there was an F5 in Michigan in 1953. Killed 116 people, right? One of the biggest tornadoes in American history, in fact, for death and destruction. And we did have a peak. We did have a peak in 2005 with Katrina. Okay, and we had Katrina happen, and there was a push of hurricanes at that point, but 1 year. Other than that, hurricane activity has been on the decline. On the decline. Look at any graph. Your U.S. hurricane landfalls, 1900 through 2015, averaging less than 2 a year, on average. The most we've ever had is 6. And they continue to decline. I mean, look at the graphs. There's enough mathematical evidence out there. You can go look at all of it. You can, I mean, it's very easy to go look at all of it. And global cyclones worldwide, also declining for a decade. So all this doom and gloom. Okay, listen, here's the deal. If it was truly this volatile and this, if the Earth's atmosphere and the weather was this angry, for lack of a better term, if it was this angry, don't you think we'd see a lot more empirical evidence of that? And the empirical evidence we are seeing shows us something completely different. And so therefore, when I show you these stats, and you can look these up, by the way, easy to find, a ton of information out there, then you're labeled as a buffoon. You're not smart enough to understand, you know what, I can read charts and graphs the same as the next guy. And I can do tornado counts, and I don't even have to. There's lots of people out there that keep tornado counts, and they also keep Fujitsu scale records as to how many intense tornadoes you have. You know, there's only about, there hasn't been an F5 in this country in a couple of years, actually. There has not been an F5 tornado in this country in a couple of years. The one at Joplin was an F4, for the record. At least from what I read here. So you tell me. You tell me what's going on. It's 14 after the hour on a Wednesday. It's the Steve Gruber Show. Is 15 after the hour on this Wednesday.
You move too fast. You got to make the
Welcome back to the program. As I told you earlier, we have another solid program. We had a couple of folks thanking us for the work we do as far as the guests we get, and I appreciate the support. We work very hard. Ivy and Rob work very hard to make sure we get the right guests, including our next guest, Majority Leader State Senator Arlan Meekhof, Republican from Michigan here. Welcome to the program, Senator.
Good morning, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you back on the program. A lot of things going on, and I'd like to get to some of those things, but the first reason I have you here is you have reached out and made an endorsement as we head toward the March 8th primary here in Michigan, and you've reached to a dark horse. Of course, I get a lot of heat for saying this guy has what it takes to win, so I thought it made me chuckle when I saw who you had picked here, but I didn't tell anybody. Senator, who do you endorse for president in the GOP race, and why?
I reached out at the Mackinac Conference and endorsed Governor Kasich from Ohio. I think he's the right guy. given his breadth of experience and being a congressman, being the chair of the Budget Committee, and had done some really wonderful things when he was a congressman. So he knows how to work with other folks in Congress, knows how to work with the president. He's done some similar things that we've done here in Michigan. Ohio was in some pretty tough spots with their budget, and they had less money in their rainy day fund than Michigan did, and their economy is flourishing, and they have about $2 billion in their rainy day fund. So certainly the guy has what it takes on the financial side, and I think on the relationship side to be the President of the United States.
Well, I catch a lot of heat from some of the listeners here when I say that I think that Kasich is uniquely qualified, and I've said that for a long time. And their knock on me, and because of their knock on him, is that he is not conservative enough, that he endorsed things like the assault weapons ban back in 1994. It's true. That he expanded Obamacare in his state and therefore, sided with the president. It's true. My point being that when it gets down to it, there is no perfect candidate. And, people do make mistakes. And I would think that Governor Kasich would acknowledge today, at least I would hope he would, that his ban on assault weapons was probably not the right choice. And I would assume that, Obamacare is not what he wants it to be. But it's here to stay after 2 Supreme Court decisions. So what do you do with it? And I can't fault him for saying, listen, this is where it's going, and I'm just trying to get ahead of the curve on it. Maybe I'm wrong, but those are some of the knocks on Governor Kasich, and therefore people give me heat for it as well.
And I catch a little heat for that, too. But again, I think your first part of that paragraph was the most correct. There's no perfect candidate, and everybody has their ideal, and it's usually someone more like themselves, but yet they're not willing to be the candidate themselves, so they have to find the best pick candidate that as closely matches them as possible.
Well, and I think some of the more conservative candidates in this cycle have some challenges as well. And here's the thing. If you go back to Ronald Reagan, who the conservatives, and I do too, hold up as the best president of my lifetime for a variety of reasons. Ronald Reagan signed into law himself as governor of California gun control measures that by today's standards would automatically disqualify him for even having a shot in the primaries, you see. And so therefore, I think that people need to be less idealistic and more pragmatic about their approach when they look at such things.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Steve, because there's being a candidate and being an ideologue and as far right as you want to be, and then there's being conservative and doing the things that you can get done in terms of moving things forward so that you make it a better place. You don't get to throw the Hail Mary pass on every piece of legislation because, like in football, if you threw Hail Mary passes on every play, you lose the game.
That's correct. You need to be practical.
In the game, not every play.
All right, so let's move on to some of the tougher questions that we have here today, and I'm sure John Kasich, Governor Kasich, appreciates your endorsement. Michigan, important state for him if he's going to lock down the nomination. But Senator, we're with Arlan Meekhof, by the way, Senator Arlan Meekhof, Majority Leader in the state Senate here in Michigan. Where are we on fixing the roads here in Michigan? This debate has gone back and forth and on and ad nauseum almost. Are we making any progress?
Yeah, I would say ad nauseum it'd be like 17 years because we probably should have done some things differently back then. Again, looking back, we probably should have done things differently. And Senate this summer passed out a common sense road funding plan and redirects current revenue, puts more money in roads, and creates a mechanism for tax relief. And we're still continuing on regular meetings with the Speaker, the Governor, and Democratic leaders. And we are soon to arrive at a consensus. And I hope that is I'm hoping that is before the end of the month. And again, it has to do with how do we do this in a long-term fashion. We heard the voters in Proposal 1. They say, some said, look, no new taxes ever, no matter what. But the reality is, over 17 years, we should have been paying a little bit more every year so that we could have what we have right now. And because we've neglected it that long, it does cost money to get there. And again, we're going to look at all the things we can to do just for roads.
And raising taxes will not be...
The preponderance of the voters said on Proposal 1, don't make me pay for other stuff, just fix the roads.
Well, they said that, but I think they also said a lot of folks no higher taxes. It'll be tap dancing down a razor blade for you, and that's just the way it's going to be because somebody's not going to be happy no matter how you slice that one out. I would prefer no new taxes as well, but we'll see what you guys come out with, and we will we'll take that apart when we get the opportunity. The last thing I want to ask you about, we don't have much time here, but the idea now that we're going to have rolling blackouts in Michigan because we're closing 9 coal-fired power plants by April of next year, and the new normal is going to be the fact that we don't have enough electricity to run Michigan. How can we allow this to happen? Why did the state not push back harder against the EPA on this measure, and why should we accept this? We don't have a lot of time, 30 seconds.
All right. So first of all, the first part of those commercials are right. 8 or 9 power plants are going to close down. The point that they make that there's not going to be enough energy is not true. According to MISO, those who monitor and know what our capacity is in the Great Lakes region, it'll be 3, 4, or 5 years before we have issues like that, unless some large energy consumer comes on board. But I think the free market's going to find a way to create that new energy, just like you don't have the same cell phone you had 20 years ago. Somebody's going to figure out how to create and distribute that energy at a much cheaper rate for our consumers, and I believe in the great entrepreneurs and smart people here in Michigan to figure that out.
I hope you're right. I hope the Vice President of Consumers Energy is wrong about rolling blackouts in the state, because rolling blackouts and big fat electric bills, that's one way to get people fired up before they go to the voting booth. I'll guarantee you that. Senator Meekhof, always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
There you have it. Majority Leader of the State Senate, Arlan Meekhof, on the Steve Gruber Show. We'll be right back.
Getting your day started with news from around the state and around the world. Common Sense Radio. This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Leaves are falling all around.
It's 33 after the hour.
I was on my way.
And our next guest here, interesting story and worth exploring, I decided. So we lined him up. John E. Wade, author of the new book, The Bipolar Millionaire and the Operation. He also wrote Ronald Reagan's Wisdom for the 21st Century and How to Achieve a Heaven on Earth. John, welcome to the program.
It's good to be here.
Good to talk to you. So, okay. You take us through some family experiences, political aspirations, and a whole lot here. But it's about your personal struggle with bipolar issues, your bipolar disorder. First of all, tell me about those challenges. Let's start there.
As far as my bipolar disorder, I feel like it's been cured. I've had spiritual guidance, which was part of that cure, and I'm also become a force in the Republican Party. All of that was partly due to the operation, partly due to therapy over the years, medication, everything that everybody else needs, nutrition, exercise, rest, sleep. It's taking care of yourself.
Well, when you refer to the operation, and people listening say, well, he had what, surgery? It's not what you mean. Explain what you
surgery.
mean.
It's not a surgical procedure. It's a secret. It's a name that I gave a secret agency, which is made up of the government and private entities, and they're mainly a widespread data mining and computer surveillance program of me since 1998. It's been a very long-term process, but it's been very successful.
And what is it? Why is it? The operation, it's a cooperative, if you will, between the government and private entities, you say. But what is it, and why is it? And should we be concerned about this? Is it working in our best interest? Is it working against us? What is it?
Well, let me read you a line out of Henry Kissinger's book, World Order, which I'm going through I'm starting my 7th time through it, and I plan to do a detailed analysis. The proliferation of ubiquitous sensors tracking and analyzing individuals, recording and transmitting their every experience, in some cases now essentially from birth, and at the forefront of computing and anticipating their thoughts, opens up repressive as well as liberating possibilities. In my case, it's been liberating possibilities, benevolent possibilities.
So I'm trying to understand this. So so the government in effect is in bed with big business to monitor us, and everybody can see this in a base way. If you do an internet search for a weed whip, for example, for the next week, every time you turn on your computer, there's going to be advertisements for sales on weed whips, right? I mean, there it is. If you're looking for a lawnmower, there'll be sales on lawnmowers or a car or whatever you do, right? And your computer will custom fit what you're looking for. You're saying it's taking that idea and taking it to the ultimate conclusion, which is anticipating your thoughts before you ever have them.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very much part of it, and part of the research is for artificial intelligence and bioneurology. First, they want to train government leaders. Then they want to take people suffering from mental illness, such as myself. I had bipolar disorder since 1963. Now I'm cured, but I've been cured for quite a while. And they seek to cure them. And then another thing is what I mentioned, artificial intelligence and the bioneurology.
Say that again. AI doing what now?
Development of artificial intelligence. And one method used in this sort of research is to try to copy the brain. And copy the way the brain works. You do that by following in detail a person such as me, I have my habits and routines, and if they watch me very closely, as they have since 1998, they can start not just following what I have done, but predicting what I will do.
Well, if they can do all of that, wouldn't they be able to, stop terrorism, stop crime? If they can follow people that closely, wouldn't you be able to end a lot of the scourge of the problems that humanity has?
Well, I think in terms of our government, I think we very much want to do that. In case of some governments in the world, that may not be the case.
Well, I agree with that.
And the technology development could be all over the world.
We're on the line with John E. Wade, author of the new book, The Bipolar Millionaire, and the operation being a nebulous shadow organization, if you will, a group that involves government employees, private companies, all watching you. And I don't think that would come to surprise anybody listening, that you're being watched all the time, that your cell phone can listen to you, that your computer can look at you, and that your TV can check you out in your own living room. These are all things that we've come to learn and know, and yet nobody seems to care anymore. Nobody pays much attention.
Well, there's another thing about mine is I've been the focus of the operation. In other words, I've heard and said things at the right time to impress it on my mind. I call it, what it is transactional analysis, where thousands and thousands and thousands of impulses come to mold you and change you. It's not just coming from me. It's also coming to me.
So you think that they can stimulate your response, or maybe even more directly, create your response?
Both.
Now, how do they do that?
They, in my home and in my condominium prior to that, the music systems played music that was conducive to what I was doing, or stopping what I was doing. Some of it was to fuel my passions for writing or investing. There were a lot of very beneficial things that came out of it.
So you think that they're programming that?
Absolutely. And one thing that I'm curious about is how much of it is direct human intervention in my home, and how much of it is computers control.
Well, I suppose you would wonder about that. I assume they can get the book in all the usual places. John E. Wade, author of the new book, The Bipolar Millionaire. Sir, I have to run, and I appreciate The Bipolar Millionaire and the operation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, John E. Wade. What do you make of it? 2 + 2 is 5. 2 + 2 is 5. Anyhow, who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. And 2 + 2 is 5. Come on, you know the book. It's 41 after the hour. It's the Steve Gruber Show. Do your homework. We do.
Genuine Michigan common sense on display every day.
It's 45 after on a Wednesday. My next guest, I just want to say, Raffi, where have you been?
It's been way too long, Steve.
I know. I thought we broke up. Yeah. Raffi Williams here.
Found a new one.
Yeah, the RNC spokesman. I thought we broke up. I'm a little confused by that. I thought you didn't love me anymore. Raffi Williams here, spokesman for the RNC and son of Juan Williams, who we see a lot on the left. And again, I think you guys must have the most fascinating conversations at Thanksgiving.
I'm going to set up a CCTV in my parents' kitchen for those conversations.
Dude, that would be, tell you what, if you could get a streaming signal, people would watch that. You could get sponsorships. You could make some real money on that deal. I'm telling you.
Better than what the RNC's paying me.
Well, there you go. Hey, yeah, so all right, so here we're looking at the Hillary Clinton thing, and golly, Kevin McCarthy. Talk about sticking your foot in your mouth and saying, well, this was just a thing that basically the way, I don't think it's what he meant, but the way it came across is basically we created this committee to discredit Hillary Clinton, which they're already out with ads and so forth. I wonder if Kevin McCarthy should even be the speaker at this point. What a mess. What do you make of it?
Well, I mean, I think that we know and that you hear people, I mean, that Benghazi is a serious issue. People want to know what happened to these four people, where was our leadership during this time, and how could we have done something different? And so I think that this is a real issue that Congress is investigating. And so I think that is the heart of this issue. Now, I think also, as things come to light, people have a changed perception of Hillary Clinton. You combine the investigation into Benghazi with the investigation into her emails, and yes, you do see her poll numbers drop, and people have an opinion about her. But the Benghazi investigation on the Hill is literally looking into Benghazi. How can we keep our diplomats safe abroad? And that's a serious issue that people want answers to.
Yeah, they do want answers. As a result of the Benghazi hearings and Trey Gowdy, and I think Trey Gowdy is doing fabulous work. His hair confuses me, but he's doing fabulous work as the chairman there. Well, it's true. But it's led us to all these emails and impropriety and homebrew servers, and now a second company back on the Eastern Seaboard involved that may have connection to Hillary Clinton's emails and backups, and the mess gets. It seems to me, Raffi, the mess gets bigger every day.
Oh, it really does, and it's so astonishing to me. They asked her to turn over everything she has, so she goes through and wipes her email server, and then we find out that Platte River in Colorado actually might have a backup. So we go to them, and do they even have classified access to reach classified information? And then we find out now there's a second backup. And so now the FBI is investigating this company and making sure they get all the emails that they can. It seems that Hillary Clinton is being as opaque as possible, and every step she's taken has been to hide things from the American public instead of doing her job as Secretary of State, being available to FOIA requests and so on. She's hiding, and that's really the problem here, is that Hillary Clinton seems to play by her own rules. Yeah,
another question. David Kendall, her attorney, did he have clearance to have the backup drives and the thumb drives and so forth? Apparently he did, according to what I've read, that somehow he had a security clearance. How in the world did a private attorney, get security clearance through the United States government?
Well, when you have friends like Hillary Clinton, right?
I suppose. But I know it's unusual, though.
He got, from what I can tell in my readings, he got security clearance after the fact, after they started to find out that, oh, man, there is classified information on these servers. That's when he got it. So I'm not sure that he ever had it from the get, and which is even more disturbing that they are sharing and passing along and storing classified information in unprotected servers nonetheless, but also handing it out to people. I mean, there are two servers at Platte River at Dado, and then the one she had in her basement in Chappaqua, New York. The security on these, you saw that she was getting spammed by Russian hackers. I mean, this is something that was available. It really put our national security at risk. Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to a couple of other topics here. Donald Trump, still on top in the polls. Donald Trump has come out with, plan on immigration, a taxation plan that he says, in fact, if it was applied, would save me some money, and I would think that was great. But what do you make of Donald Trump? A lot of the Republicans obviously not thrilled with him on top, but he continues to chug along. Despite the calls for his demise time and again, he doesn't seem to be going anywhere.
No, I think Donald Trump is a leader from multiple angles. One is he's bringing a lot of attention to this primary that would not be had this early on in the race. I mean, you look at our debate viewing records that they set. I mean, this is something that doesn't happen in August, September, October, a year before the primaries. Most Americans aren't tuning in, but they are because of Donald Trump, I think. And the other factor is he's tapping in to the fact that people are sick of the status quo. They believe that America's at a precipice and that we need to do something. We need to change the direction this country is going in. Donald Trump is tapping into that. He's an outsider, which is why I think people are flocking to him and listening to what he has to say. And I think it's going to be interesting going down the stretch here as we head into Iowa and then into March, that people are really, they want something different. They want a leader who's going to be bold, who's going to make changes, who's going to make things happen. They feel like the status quo is not working for them.
We're on the line with Raffi Williams here, the RNC spokesman on the Steve Gruber Show, with talking about all the things that are going on. As you look at the outsiders, whether it's Trump or Dr. Ben Carson or Carly Fiorina, all upstarts, and collectively they represent about 60% of the Republican votes right now. Do you think that will hold, or do you think there will be a change? I mean, Marco Rubio's making a nice move, and John Kasich continues to hang back in good shape in New Hampshire, in good shape in Ohio and other places, and with money in his pocket. So the race is probably still going to get a lot more interesting.
I think it's going to get a lot more interesting. And in terms of, looking into my crystal ball here, I mean, I wouldn't have told you at the beginning of the summer that Donald Trump was going to get in the race. So I would not be a good predictor, given my track record on that one. So I think that this is going to be an interesting race. It'll be interesting to see as we continue with debates, as campaigns and candidates, engage with voters out in the field there. And I think that, there's no predicting this cycle. We haven't seen a cycle like this in terms of the depth of the field, in terms of the variety of candidates. I think this is, in a long time, in my history at least, I haven't seen anything like this. So I think that this is going to just continue to get more interesting. I think it's going to draw people in, because not only is it important for the future of our country and people who are involved in politics, but it also has a little soap opera-esque feel to it, where there's a story and a narrative being built. There's a back and forth between the different characters and
a little drama there, yeah. Good stuff, Raffi. I have to run. RNC spokesman Raffi Williams here on the program. Raffi, don't let it be so long this time.
All right, well, Steve, thank you.
All right, talk soon. Raffi Williams here on the Steve Gruber Show. We'll be right back.